In the endless white of the Arctic tundra, where temperatures drop to 40 below and survival depends on ancient wisdom, a dying woman makes one final desperate plea. With her last breath, she places her 5-year-old daughter into the weathered hands of Anyu, a poor Eskimo hunter who has nothing but his skill and his heart. The little girl, pale and trembling, speaks no words he understands, but her eyes hold the universal language of fear and need. Anyu carries the child through howling winds to his simple camp, where he builds her a small igloo with blocks of ice and sealskin. As days turn to weeks, something beautiful happens in that frozen wilderness. The hunter, who barely had enough food for himself, begins calling this lost child daughter, and she learns to call him father. But what happens when the outside world comes looking for her? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The wind had died to a whisper by the time Anyu finished sealing the igloo's entrance. Inside the dome of ice and snow, the temperature rose just enough to keep them from freezing, though their breath still formed clouds in the dim light filtering through the translucent walls. The child sat huddled in the far corner, her small frame wrapped in the fur coat her dying mother had pressed around her shoulders. Her fingers clutched something at her throat, a silver locket that caught what little light penetrated their shelter. She hadn't spoken since her mother's final words, those desperate syllables in a language Anyu didn't recognize. Anyu moved slowly, deliberately, keeping his weathered hands visible as he arranged his few possessions. His carved ivory knife, passed down from his grandfather, lay within easy reach, not as a threat, but as a tool of survival he would need to teach her to use. In this land, knowledge of such implements meant the difference between life and death. He pulled dried seal meat from his pack, tearing it into small pieces. The girl watched with hollow eyes as he chewed his portion slowly, demonstrating its safety. When he offered her a piece, she shrank back further into the furs. "Eat," he said in his own language, then tried gestures. He pointed to his mouth, to hers, to the meat. "Eat." She shook her head, tears freezing on her pale cheeks before they could fall. Anyu remembered his own childhood, when the great hunger had taken his parents and younger sister. He had been older than this girl, perhaps 8 or 9, when the village elders found him near death in his family's collapsed shelter. They had fed him slowly, patiently, understanding that trauma could make a person forget how to accept help. He placed the meat on a flat piece of driftwood and slid it across the ice floor toward her, then retreated to his own side of the shelter. From his pack, he withdrew a small clay pot and a precious portion of seal oil. Using techniques learned from watching his mother, he lit a tiny flame that cast dancing shadows on the curved walls. The warmth was minimal, but psychological comfort was as important as physical in these conditions. The girl's rigid posture softened slightly as the golden light filled their small world. Next, Anyu produced a bladder of milk from a caribou cow he had hunted days before the storm. He warmed it carefully over his small flame, testing the temperature against his wrist as he had seen mothers do with their babies. The sweet scent filled the igloo, and for the first time, the girl showed interest. Her stomach made audible protests, betraying her hunger despite her fear. "Milk," Anyu said softly, using the English word he had learned from traders. "Good, warm." He drank a small portion himself, then offered the bladder to her. This time, she didn't retreat. Her small hands reached out tentatively, accepting the warm container. She drank deeply, the nourishment bringing color back to her lips. Encouraged, Anyu tried the meat again. This time she accepted a small piece, chewing carefully as if remembering how to eat. Her fingers never released the silver locket, treating it like a talisman against the alien world she had entered. As the hours passed, Anyu began speaking softly in his own language, pointing to objects and naming them. "Igloo," he said, touching the wall. "Ice, snow, fire." He pointed to himself. "Anyu." The girl listened without responding, but her attention suggested understanding. When he pointed to her and raised his eyebrows questioningly, she touched the locket and whispered something too quiet to hear. "Anna," she finally said, so softly he almost missed it. "Anna," Anyu nodded respectfully. "Anna," he repeated, giving the foreign sounds his best pronunciation. As exhaustion overcame them both, Anyu arranged their sleeping area with practiced efficiency. He placed his thickest furs between the girl and the ice floor, creating a barrier against the deadly cold that could steal life from the unwary. He positioned himself between her and the entrance, a living shield against whatever dangers might emerge from the Arctic night, before sleep claimed him. Anyu listened to the child's breathing, irregular with suppressed sobs, but growing steadier as warmth and food worked their healing magic. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had both survived their first test together. Outside, the aurora borealis painted the sky in sheets of green and blue, silent witness to an unlikely bond beginning to form in the heart of the world's most unforgiving landscape. 3 weeks had passed since the storm brought Anna into Anyu's life, and the girl who once cowered in the corner now walked beside him across the frozen landscape with growing confidence. Her pale skin had taken on the ruddy glow of someone learning to thrive in harsh conditions. Though she still clutched her silver locket during moments of uncertainty, Anyu had been working on a special project each evening after their daily survival lessons. Using sealskin he had been saving for his own winter repairs, he carefully stitched a parka sized for Anna's small frame. The work was meticulous. Each stitch had to be perfect to ensure warmth and waterproofing. He lined it with the softest Arctic fox fur, saved from a hunt earlier that season. "Today we learn ice," Anyu announced in the mixture of English and Inuktitut that had become their shared language. He pointed toward the frozen river that wound through the valley below their camp. Anna nodded eagerly. She had absorbed his lessons about wind patterns and snow consistency with remarkable speed, showing an intuitive understanding that surprised even Anyu. Yesterday, she had correctly identified the approach of a weather change by the way the clouds gathered on the horizon. They descended toward the river, Anyu carrying his testing stick, a carved piece of walrus tusk that his grandfather had taught him to use for measuring ice thickness. Anna watched as he demonstrated the proper technique, striking the ice in different locations and listening to the resulting sounds. "Thick ice sounds like this," he said, striking a solid section that rang with a deep, resonant tone. "Thin ice sounds like this." He moved to an area where the water ran faster underneath, producing a hollow, dangerous sound. Anna took the stick when he offered it, her small hands gripping it seriously. She struck the ice where he had demonstrated thick sections, then moved toward the thinner areas. The difference in sound was clear to her ears now. "Good ice, bad ice," she said, pointing to each section in turn. "Very good," Anyu smiled. It was the first time she had initiated classification of their lessons without prompting. As they continued their ice education, voices carried across the frozen landscape. 3 hunters from the nearest village approached, their sleds loaded with gear for an extended expedition. Anyu recognized Nuka, an elder who had known Anyu's father, along with 2 younger men whose expressions grew curious as they spotted Anna. "Anyu," Nuka called in their traditional greeting. "The spirits brought you a strange gift during the last storm." "The spirits brought me a daughter," Anyu replied carefully. Placing a protective hand on Anna's shoulder, the younger hunters exchanged glances. One of them, Tuktu, stepped closer to examine Anna with unconcealed skepticism. "White children belong with white people," Tuktu said bluntly. "What do you know about raising such a creature?" "She will never survive a real winter." Anna stepped forward, understanding the challenge in Tuktu's tone, even if she missed some of the words. She picked up Anyu's testing stick and walked confidently to the ice, demonstrating the thick and thin sections with precise strikes. Then she pointed to the wind direction and said in careful Inuktitut, "Weather changes soon." Wind shifts north. The hunters looked up at the sky, noting the subtle cloud formations that indeed suggested an approaching weather shift. Nuka nodded approvingly. The child reads signs well for one so young, he admitted. She learns faster than many who are born to this life, Anyu said proudly. Anna understands what the ice tells her. Tuktu remained unconvinced. Understanding ice is one thing. Surviving the hunger months is another. What happens when food runs short and difficult choices must be made? Anyu's jaw tightened. He knew the harsh mathematics of Arctic survival, the brutal calculations that sometimes required sacrificing the weak to save the strong. But he also knew that Anna possessed a strength that couldn't be measured in pounds of flesh or stores of fat. She will survive because I will teach her everything my grandfather taught me, Anyu said firmly. And because she has the heart of a survivor, Anna looked up at him, understanding. The commitment in his voice. She reached into her parka and pulled out the silver locket, opening it to reveal a small photograph inside. For the first time she showed it to Anyu, a picture of a man with kind eyes and Anna's same stubborn chin. "My papa," she said quietly. "Gone now." "You papa now." The simple declaration silenced even Tuktu's objections. Anna carefully closed the locket and tucked it away, then took Anyu's weathered hand in her small one. Nuka nodded slowly. "The child chooses her family. That is the old way." As the hunters prepared to continue their journey, Nuka approached Anyu privately. "There are rumors," he said quietly. "White men asking questions in the trading posts. Looking for a lost child. Be careful, my friend." Anyu watched the hunting party disappear into the white distance, Anna's hand still warm in his. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as father and daughter, bound by choice rather than blood. The realization struck Anyu one evening as he watched Anna organize their fishing gear with methodical precision. He had been calling her by the name she whispered that first night, but something in her careful movements suggested layers of identity he had never explored. The silver locket at her throat caught the firelight, and he wondered what other secrets it might hold. "Anna," he said gently, settling beside her on the sealskin mat. "Tell me about before. Before the storm. Before your mama brought you to me." The girl's hands stilled on the bone fishhooks she had been arranging. Her English had improved dramatically, mixed now with Inuktitut words that came as naturally as breathing. But questions about her past still made her retreat into silence. "Mama called me something else sometimes," she admitted finally. "When she was very sick, she would whisper other words." "What words?" Anna opened the locket with careful fingers, revealing not just the photograph Anyu had seen before, but tiny engravings inside the silver case. She traced letters she couldn't read, her fingertip following curves and lines worn smooth by countless touches. She said, "Papa wrote my name here." "My real name." Anyu leaned closer, studying the delicate script etched into the precious metal. His own reading was limited to the basic English the traders had taught him, but he could make out some letters. "Elizabeth," he said slowly, sounding out the foreign syllables. "Elizabeth Anna." The girl nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "Elizabeth Anna Morrison. But Mama always called me Anna when she was happy, and Elizabeth when she was worried. Which name feels right to you now?" Anna considered this with the seriousness she brought to all of Anyu's lessons. She looked around their warm shelter, at the tools and weapons that had become familiar companions, at the weathered face of the man who had saved her life. "In the old world I was Elizabeth," she said finally. "Here with you I am Anna, but maybe I can be both." Anyu understood. He had carried his grandfather's name alongside his own for years, honoring the past while living in the present. Identity could be layered like winter clothing, each piece serving its purpose. From his pack, he withdrew a piece of driftwood he had been shaping during quiet moments. Using his carved bone knife, he had been working on a small figure, roughly humanoid, but clearly meant for a child's hands. The wood was smooth now, worn by hours of careful carving. "For you," he said, offering the simple doll. "Every child should have something that belongs only to them." Anna accepted the gift with reverence, understanding its significance. Anyu had used precious time and materials to create something purely for her joy, not for survival or necessity. The doll represented childhood preserved even in the harshest environment. What should we call her? Anna asked, cradling the wooden figure. You decide. She is yours. Anna studied the doll's simple features, seeing possibility in the carved lines that suggested a face. Siku, she said finally. Like the name you called me yesterday when I spotted the seal-breathing hole. Anyu smiled. Siku meant ice in his language, but he had used it affectionately when Anna demonstrated particular cleverness. Now she was claiming that word as part of her expanding identity. So you are Anna, who was Elizabeth, and sometimes you are Siku when you are being especially wise. And you are my papa, even though you didn't make me in your wife's belly. The innocent honesty of the statement touched something deep in Anyu's chest. He had never married, never had children of his own. The solitary life of a hunter had seemed sufficient until Anna arrived to show him what he had been missing. That is true, he said. I am your papa because we chose each other. The sound of approaching footsteps on snow interrupted their conversation. Through the hide covering their shelter's entrance, they heard the voice of Saumik, the village elder whose opinions carried weight in all important matters. Anyu, I must speak with you. Anyu gestured for Anna to stay with her new doll and stepped outside into the cold night. Saumik's expression was grave in the moonlight. Word has reached us from the trading post, the elder said without preamble. Government men are asking questions. They have papers with pictures. They speak of a lost child who must be returned to her proper family. Anyu felt his world shift, like ice cracking under unexpected pressure. What kind of papers? Official papers. The kind that carry the weight of outside law. They say the child's grandparents have been searching since she disappeared. They offer rewards for information. Inside the shelter, Anna was singing softly to her wooden doll, mixing English lullabies with Inuktitut words Anyu had taught her. The sound of her voice, confident and happy, made his chest tighten with protective instinct. The child belongs here now, Anyu said firmly. She has chosen her place. I know that, my friend. But outside law does not recognize the choice of children, especially children who are not of our blood. We must decide how to respond before these government men arrive. Anyu looked back toward his shelter, where golden light spilled through gaps in the hide covering. Inside, his daughter, for that is what she had become, continued her gentle song, safe and loved and home. Let them come, he said quietly. Anna will show them herself where she belongs. The ice began its ancient song of breaking as winter loosened its grip on the land. Anna stood beside Anyu on a rocky outcrop, watching massive chunks of frozen river crack and shift with sounds like thunder rolling across the tundra. She had grown taller over the long winter months, her movements now carrying the confident grace of someone who belonged in this harsh landscape. Anyu withdrew a piece of carved walrus bone from his pack, its surface etched with precise markings that looked like random scratches to untrained eyes. But Anna had been learning to read these symbols for weeks now, understanding how her adopted father's people navigated the featureless Arctic using knowledge passed down through countless generations. When the ice breaks, navigation becomes different, Anyu explained, pointing to various marks on the bone chart. We must read the stars differently, watch for new landmarks that winter hid from us. Anna traced the carved lines with her fingertip, recognizing the pattern that represented the North Star and its surrounding constellations. This mark shows summer hunting grounds? Very good. And this one? The place where caribou cross the river when they migrate. Anyu nodded approvingly. Anna's quick understanding of traditional knowledge continued to amaze him. She absorbed lessons about weather, hunting, and survival with an intuitive grasp that some adults never achieved. A distant sound made them both turn, the bark of sled dogs carrying across the warming air. Anna's hand instinctively moved to her throat, fingers finding the familiar comfort of her silver locket beneath her parka. Visitors still made her nervous, especially unexpected ones. Traders, Anyu identified, recognizing the specific pitch of the lead dog's voice. Early this season, They descended from their observation point and walked back toward their winter camp, where several other families had gathered for the transition between seasons. The trading expedition consisted of 3 sleds loaded with goods from distant settlements, led by a weathered man named Kanguk, whom Anyu had known for many years. "Anyu, my friend," Kanguk called out as his team settled into resting position. "The winter treated you well, I see. And your daughter has grown strong." Anna stayed close to Anyu's side, but no longer hid behind him when strangers spoke. She had learned that confidence projected strength, and strength earned respect in this unforgiving world. "What news do you bring from the outside?" Anyu asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Kanguk's expression grew serious as he unloaded bundles of trade goods. "Strange things, my friend. Government men have been asking questions in every settlement. They carry pictures of a white child, offer money for information about her whereabouts." Anna's grip tightened on her wooden doll, the carved figure Anyu had made for her during the darkest winter nights. She understood enough of the conversation to recognize they were talking about her. What kind of questions? Anyu kept his voice carefully neutral. Questions about families who might have taken in lost children during the great storms last autumn. "They say the child's family is desperate to find her, that she was kidnapped from a research station that was attacked." This was new information. And you had assumed Anna's mother was a traveler who had become lost in the storm. But the mention of an attack suggested something more complex and dangerous. "Do these government men say what happened to the research station?" "Burned completely. Everyone killed except this one child who disappeared." Kanguk glanced at Anna, his eyes thoughtful. "They say she is the daughter of important scientists who were studying climate changes in the Arctic." Anna looked up at Anyu with questions in her eyes. She remembered fragments of her life before, laboratories filled with strange equipment, her parents working late into the night. The terror of running through snow as men with guns destroyed everything she had known. "The child they seek," Anyu said carefully. "What do they plan to do if they find her?" "Return her to her grandparents in the south. They say she belongs in schools, with proper medical care, among her own people." Anyu felt Anna's small hand slip into his, seeking reassurance. She had found her place among his people, learned to read the language of ice and wind, discovered strengths she never knew she possessed. The idea of being taken back to the outside world filled her with dread. "Some children," Anyu said slowly, "find their true family in unexpected places." Kanguk nodded understanding. "That is true, but outside law does not always recognize such truths." As the trading session continued, Anna helped sort through goods and participated in the social aspects of the gathering. Other children from nearby families included her naturally in their games, and adults consulted her opinion on weather patterns with genuine respect. When evening came and the traders prepared to continue their journey, Kanguk approached Anyu privately. "The government men will come here eventually," he warned. "They are systematic in their search, and someone will eventually provide information for the reward money." Anyu watched Anna teaching younger children how to identify edible plants by their spring growth patterns, sharing knowledge she had learned through hard experience. "Then we will be ready for them," he said quietly. Anna will speak for herself about where she belongs. The summer hunting season brought abundance that Anna had never experienced during her harsh winter introduction to Arctic life. Fish ran thick in the rivers, caribou moved in great herds across the tundra, and the constant daylight allowed for extended expeditions that would have been impossible in winter's darkness. Anna stood waist-deep in the rushing water, holding one end of a fishing net woven from sinew and plant fibers. Anyu held the other end, and between them they had created a trap that channeled the swimming salmon toward a narrow collection point. The technique required patience, timing, and perfect coordination, qualities Anna had developed through months of shared survival. "Now," Anyu called softly, and they both lifted simultaneously. The net came up heavy with silver fish, their scales flashing in the endless summer sunlight. Anna laughed with delight at their success, her joy as bright as the fish themselves. This was their third major catch of the day, enough to provide food for their family and surplus to share with elders who could no longer hunt for themselves. "You have become very skilled with the nets," Anyu observed as they carried their catch to shore. "Your hands know the rhythm of the water now." Anna beamed with pride. She had learned that in Anyu's culture, competence was the highest form of praise. To be acknowledged as skilled meant acceptance as a full member of the community, regardless of the color of her skin or the circumstances of her arrival. Together, they began the practiced routine of preparing their catch. Anna wielded her own small knife, a piece of carved bone that Anyu had shaped specifically for her hands, with confidence born of experience. She cleaned fish with swift, efficient motions, while Anyu prepared the smoking racks that would preserve their surplus for leaner times. "Papa," Anna said, using the Inuktitut word that had become natural to her, "will you teach me to make fish hooks like yours?" Anyu looked up from his work, surprised by the request. The creation of fishing implements was considered advanced knowledge, typically taught only to children who had proven their commitment to traditional ways over many seasons. "The bone must be carved very precisely," he explained. "One mistake and the hook will break when you most need it to hold strong." "I want to learn everything you know," Anna said seriously. "So I can teach others someday, the way you taught me." The request touched something deep in Anyu's heart. Anna wasn't just asking to learn a skill. She was asking to become a keeper of knowledge, a link in the chain of cultural transmission that had sustained his people for countless generations. From his toolkit, Anyu withdrew a piece of walrus tusk that he had been aging for months. The ivory was hard and durable, perfect for creating tools that would last for years. He also produced his smallest carving implements, delicate knives that allowed for precise work on miniature scales. "First, you must understand the shape," he began, sketching the hook's curve in the sandy shore. "It must be strong enough to hold a fighting fish, but light enough to cast properly, and sharp enough to set securely." Anna listened with the focused attention she brought to all important lessons. She traced the pattern with her finger, memorizing the proportions and angles that would make the difference between success and failure. As they worked together on the intricate carving, other families from their extended group moved around them, engaged in their own summer preparations. Children played games that taught hunting skills, mothers prepared traditional foods, and elders shared stories that preserved tribal memory. Anna had found her place in this rhythm of community life. The other children accepted her completely now, and adults consulted her opinion on matters related to weather and wildlife behavior. Her pale skin and different origins had become simply part of who she was, no more remarkable than any other individual characteristic. "Anna," called Nayeli, a girl roughly her own age whose family camped nearby. "Come help us gather berries. The cloudberries are perfect today." Anna looked up from her hook carving, her hands stained with ivory dust and her face bright with concentration. "May I go, Papa?" "Take your gathering bag," Anyu replied. "And remember to leave some berries for the animals who depend on them." Anna tucked her partially carved hook into her tool pouch and ran to join the berry-picking expedition. Anyu watched her go, noting how naturally she moved among the other children, how effortlessly she switched between English and Inuktitut, depending on who she was addressing. As afternoon stretched toward evening, the berry pickers returned with bags full of the precious fruit that would provide essential vitamins through the coming winter. Anna's bag was as full as any of the others, and she had organized a game that made the work enjoyable for the younger children. "She belongs here," said Tapisa, an elder woman whose opinion carried great weight in the community. She had been watching Anna interact with the children, noting her natural leadership and generosity. "Yes," Anyu agreed. "She belongs here." But even as he spoke the words, he noticed a speck on the horizon that resolved into approaching figures. Travelers were coming, and something in their purposeful movement suggested this was not a casual visit. The government agent arrived with the morning mist, his heavy boots crunching on the frost-covered ground as he approached the summer camp. Agent David Harrison wore official clothing that marked him as an outsider, pressed uniform, polished insignia, and a bearing that suggested authority unused to being questioned. Behind him walked a local guide who looked uncomfortable with his role in this expedition. Anyu stood beside their family shelter, watching the approach with calm alertness. Enna remained inside, but he could sense her listening through the hide walls, understanding that this moment would determine her future. "Are you Anyu?" Harrison asked in English, consulting a folder thick with official documents. "I am Anyu," he replied. His English careful but clear. Harrison opened the folder and withdrew a photograph that made Anyu's breath catch. It showed Anna as she had been before, pale, frightened, wearing clothes from the outside world. The contrast with the confident, capable girl she had become was striking. "I'm looking for this child." Elizabeth Anna Morrison, age 6, missing since last October. "We have reports that someone in this area took in a white child during the storm season." Anyu studied the photograph, then looked directly into Harrison's eyes. "I have a daughter named Anna. She came to me during the great storm when her mother was dying. The woman asked me to care for her child. Where is this child now?" "She is with her family." Harrison's expression sharpened. "Mr. Anyu, I need to be very clear. This child has living relatives who have been searching for her for months. Her grandparents are prepared to provide her with education, medical care, and opportunities that simply aren't available in this environment. Anna has education. She knows how to survive, how to read weather and ice, how to find food and make shelter. She speaks 2 languages and understands the world she lives in." "That's not the kind of education I'm talking about," Harrison said impatiently. "She needs formal schooling, proper nutrition, medical attention that meets civilized standards." The word civilized hung in the air like a challenge. And you had heard such language before from government officials who viewed traditional ways as inferior to outside customs. "My daughter is healthy and strong," Anyu said firmly. "She learns what she needs to know to live successfully in her chosen world." Her chosen world. Harrison consulted his papers again. "She's 6 years old. Children that age don't get to choose their living situations, especially when it involves cultural circumstances their birth families never intended." "Anna," Anyu called softly toward the shelter. "Come speak with this man." Anna emerged wearing her summer clothing, traditional garments that fit her perfectly, her hair braided in the style of Arctic girls, her posture confident and alert. She looked nothing like the frightened child in Harrison's photograph. Harrison stared at her transformation, clearly struggling to reconcile the official image with the reality before him. "Hello," Anna said politely in English, though her accent now carried traces of Anyu's linguistic patterns. "You are looking for someone?" "Elizabeth, honey, my name is Agent Harrison. I've been sent by your grandparents to bring you home safely. They've been so worried about you." Anna's hand moved instinctively to her throat, fingers finding the silver locket that remained her connection to her past. "My grandparents?" "Your father's parents, Elizabeth. They live in Vancouver now, and they have a beautiful house ready for you. You'll have your own room, toys, books, everything a little girl needs." Anna looked up at Anyu, then back at Harrison. "My papa is here," she said simply. "My home is here. Elizabeth, I understand this man has been kind to you, but he's not your real father. Your real family has legal rights and responsibilities. They can give you opportunities that just aren't possible in this remote location." Anna stepped closer to Anyu, her small hand slipping into his weathered one. "He is my real papa because he chose to love me when I had nobody. That makes family." Harrison pulled out more documents, his frustration evident. "I have legal authority to take you into protective custody if necessary. This situation involves child welfare issues that require immediate attention." "What authority?" Anyu asked quietly. Harrison showed him official papers stamped with government seals. "Federal authority supersedes local customs when it comes to the welfare of children. Elizabeth needs to be evaluated by qualified professionals to ensure she hasn't suffered any harm during her time here. I have suffered no harm, Anna said firmly, her English becoming more precise as emotions strengthened her voice. I was dying when Papa found me. Now I am strong. I know how to live. I know who I am. You're a little girl who's been through trauma, Harrison said more gently. Sometimes trauma can make us confused about what's best for us. Anna looked around the camp, where other families had gathered to observe this confrontation. Children her age watched from respectful distances, their faces showing concern for their friend. Adults stood ready to support Anyu if needed, but understanding that this was ultimately Anna's moment to speak for herself. I am Anna, who was Elizabeth, she said clearly. I remember my mama and papa who died. I keep them here. She touched her locket. But I live with my chosen papa who saved my life and taught me everything important. This is my real family now. Harrison closed his folder with a decisive snap. I'm sorry, but that's not how the law works. I'll need to take Elizabeth with me today for proper evaluation and processing. The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of tension through the gathered community. Anyu felt Anna's grip tighten on his hand, but her voice remained steady. No, she said simply. I choose to stay with my family. That evening, as Agent Harrison set up his official camp a respectful distance from the community, Anna sat with Anyu by their small fire, turning her silver locket over in her hands. The photograph inside seemed different now, not just a memory of her lost father, but a bridge between two worlds that were pulling her in opposite directions. Papa, she said quietly, tell me about your family, your real family from before. Anyu studied her face in the firelight, understanding that she needed to hear about loss and choice, about how families could be broken and remade. I had a sister named Kira, he began. She was 3 years younger than me, with hair black as a raven's wing and eyes that missed nothing. She could track a rabbit through fresh snow when she was only 5 years old. Anna leaned closer, sensing the importance of this story. One winter, when the hunting was very bad, our parents sent us to stay with our uncle's family in a village 2 days' walk from here. They thought we would be safer there, with more hunters to provide food. What happened? A storm came, worse than any storm in living memory. It lasted 6 days, and when it finally ended, we learned that our parents' village had been buried under an avalanche. Everyone was gone. Anna's grip tightened on her locket. You became orphans. Yes, our uncle's family wanted to keep Kira because she was young and could grow up truly belonging to them. But they said I was too old, too set in the ways of my birth family. They found another family to take me, people who needed an extra hunter but had no interest in making me a true son. Were you sad? Very sad, but also angry. I felt like my real family was being erased, like I was supposed to forget my parents and sister and become someone else entirely. Anna opened her locket and stared at her father's photograph. But you didn't forget. No, I kept their memory alive while building a new life. And when I grew old enough, I came back to this place where my family had lived. I made my home here, close to their spirits, but not trapped by their ghosts. What happened to Kira? Anyu's expression grew sad. She became fully part of her new family. When I saw her again years later, she looked at me like a stranger. The people who raised her had given her love and security. But they had also taught her that her past was something to leave behind. Anna considered this story, understanding its relevance to her own situation. Do you think my grandparents want to erase my life here? I think they want to give you what they believe is best. But sometimes what people think is best doesn't match what the heart knows is true. From his pack, Anyu withdrew an object Anna had never seen before, an old photograph, faded and creased from years of careful handling. It showed a young Inuit family, parents, a boy who was clearly Anyu, and a small girl with bright, intelligent eyes. This is my birth family, he said, offering the photograph to Anna. I have carried this picture for 30 years. But I have also built a life that honors their memory without being imprisoned by it. Anna held both photographs, her father's image in the locket and Anyu's family picture. You kept both worlds. Yes, and so can you if that is what you choose. But Anna, you must understand that Agent Harrison will not give up easily. Government authority is very strong in the outside world. What will happen if I have to go with him? I will not let you be taken against your will. But there may be legal battles, court hearings, people who will question our family bond because it was made by choice rather than blood. Anna studied the two photographs, seeing faces that represented different kinds of love, different ways of belonging. Her biological father's eyes held gentleness and intelligence. Anyu's parents radiated strength and endurance. All of them were gone now, but their legacy lived in the choices their children made. Papa, if I have to talk to judges and lawyers, will you help me find the right words? I will help you speak your truth, but the words must come from your heart, not from mine. Anna carefully closed her locket and handed Anyu's family photograph back to him. I want to learn more about your sister Kira. I want to understand what happens when families get separated. Tomorrow I will tell you more. Tonight we should rest. Tomorrow may bring difficult conversations. As they prepared for sleep, Anna curled up close to Anyu's warmth, her mind working through the complexities of identity and belonging. Outside their shelter, Agent Harrison's official tent glowed with electric lantern light, a symbol of the outside world's technological advantages and bureaucratic power. Papa, yes? If I keep both families in my heart, am I being disloyal to either one? Anyu considered the question carefully. Love is not a limited resource, Anna. Having love for your birth family does not diminish your love for our family. The heart can hold many truths at once. Even when other people say I have to choose just one, especially then. The morning brought a gathering unlike any Anna had witnessed before. Elder Salmik stood in the center of the camp, holding the traditional talking stick, a carved piece of driftwood adorned with carved symbols representing the wisdom of generations. The entire community had assembled, forming a circle that included men, women, children, and even Agent Harrison, who sat somewhat awkwardly on a borrowed caribou hide. We gather to hear truth spoken about the child Anna, Salmik announced in both Inuktitut and English. All who hold this stick speak only what they know to be real, not what they wish or fear. Agent Harrison shifted uncomfortably, clearly unfamiliar with indigenous decision-making processes. His briefcase sat beside him, filled with legal documents that held no power in this traditional forum. Salmik extended the talking stick toward Anna. Child, speak your truth first. Tell us where your heart finds home. Anna stood and accepted the carved wood with both hands, feeling the weight of ancestral authority. She had participated in village councils before, but never as the central figure, whose words would determine her future. My name is Anna, who was Elizabeth Morrison, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the gathered circle. I came to this place when I was lost and dying, and you saved my life and became my papa through choice, not accident. She looked directly at Agent Harrison as she continued. I remember my birth parents. They were good people who loved me, but they are gone, and I cannot bring them back by pretending to be the same child they knew. Harrison started to speak, but Salmik raised his hand for silence. In this forum, only the person holding the stick could address the assembly. I have learned to read ice and wind, Anna continued. I can find food when others would starve. I speak 2 languages and understand how to live in harmony with this land. These are not small things. These are the skills that kept my ancestors alive for thousands of years. She paused, touching her silver locket through her parka. I carry my birth family here, in my heart and in this locket. But I live with my chosen family, who taught me everything I need to know about being strong. Anna extended the talking stick toward Anyu. Papa, tell them what it means to be family. Anyu rose and accepted the carved wood, his weathered hands steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Family is not only blood, he said simply. Family is the people who feed you when you are hungry, who teach you how to survive, who choose to love you even when loving is difficult. He gestured toward Anna with obvious pride. This child came to me as a stranger, but she learned our ways with respect and dedication. She has earned her place among us through her own actions, not through pity or charity. The government man says Anna needs schools and doctors, called out Tuktu, the skeptical hunter who had initially doubted Anna's ability to survive. What do we say to that? Anyu passed the talking stick to Tapisa, the elder woman whose opinion carried great weight. She stood slowly, her aged frame still commanding respect. I have watched this child for many seasons, Tapisa said. She learns faster than children born to our ways. She shows wisdom in her choices and kindness in her actions. What more education does a person need than to know how to live well among others? Harrison finally received the talking stick when Saumik offered it to him. He stood uncertainly, clearly struggling with the cultural context of this decision-making process. I understand your attachment to Elizabeth, he began, but you must consider her long-term welfare. In the outside world, she'll need formal education to survive economically. She'll need medical care that isn't available here. She has legal rights to inherit from her family's estate. What good is inheritance if the child is not happy? Asked Nuka, the elder hunter who had known Anyu's father. Happiness isn't the only consideration, Harrison replied. There are legal obligations, social services requirements, educational standards that must be met. Anna requested the talking stick again. When it reached her hands, she stood tall despite her small stature. Agent Harrison, she said formally, I understand you want to help me, but help means different things to different people. You want to help by taking me away from everything I love. My papa helped by teaching me how to belong where I am. The circle fell silent as Anna's words settled into the morning air. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting for her final declaration. I choose to stay with my family, she announced clearly, not because I am confused or traumatized, but because I know where I belong. This is my home. These are my people. This is who I choose to be. She placed the talking stick in the center of the circle, signaling that she had spoken her final word on the matter. Agent Harrison stared at the carved wood, understanding that his legal authority had been challenged by something far older and more fundamental than government. Bureaucracy, the courtroom in Yellowknife, felt like another planet to Anna. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that bore no resemblance to the soft, natural illumination of her Arctic home. She sat between Anyu and their appointed lawyer, Margaret Clearwater, an indigenous rights attorney who had agreed to represent their case pro bono. Judge Patricia Armstrong presided from her elevated bench, her grey hair pulled back severely, and her expression suggesting years of difficult family court decisions. Anna studied the woman's face, trying to read the emotions beneath the judicial composure, applying the same observational skills Anyu had taught her for tracking animals. This is a highly unusual case, Judge Armstrong began, consulting the thick file before her. We have a child who was presumed kidnapped, but who appears to have been rescued and voluntarily adopted into an indigenous family. The legal complexities are significant. Agent Harrison sat with the government prosecutors, his uniform pressed and his documentation meticulously organized. Across the aisle, an older couple watched Anna with tears in their eyes, Robert and Helen Morrison, her biological grandparents who had traveled from Vancouver for these proceedings. Anna felt confused looking at them. They resembled her father from the locket photograph, but they were strangers carrying grief and hope that felt heavy across the courtroom space. Your Honor, the government attorney began, this case involves clear violations of federal child protection statutes. Elizabeth Morrison was removed from her legal guardians without proper procedures and has been kept from her biological family for nearly a year. Margaret Clearwater stood to respond. Your Honor, my client saved this child's life under emergency circumstances. Elizabeth, who now goes by Anna, was dying in a blizzard when her mother begged Anyu to care for her. He has provided her with love, education, and cultural identity that she has embraced completely. Judge Armstrong looked directly at Anna. "Young lady, I understand you have some things you'd like to say about your situation." Anna stood carefully, remembering Anyu's coaching about speaking clearly and respectfully to authority figures. She wore traditional clothing that Anyu's sister-in-law had sewn specifically for this occasion, a beautiful parka that demonstrated the artistry and practicality of indigenous craftsmanship. "Yes, Your Honor, I want to explain about my families. Please go ahead." "I had a family that died," Anna began, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of her words. "My mama and papa were good people who loved me. I keep their memory in my heart and in this locket." She touched the silver pendant at her throat. "But when they died, I was alone and scared. Anyu found me and became my new papa. He taught me how to be strong, how to survive, how to help other people." Judge Armstrong leaned forward slightly. "Anna, do you understand that your grandparents love you and want to provide for you?" Anna glanced toward the Morrisons, seeing the pain in their faces. "I understand they are sad because they lost my papa, and they think having me will make the sadness less. But I cannot replace their son. I can only be myself." Robert Morrison half rose from his seat. "Elizabeth, sweetheart, we don't want to replace anyone. We just want to give you the life your parents would have wanted for you." "What kind of life?" Anna asked directly. "A life with education, opportunities, a chance to honor your father's scientific legacy. He was working on climate research that could help preserve the Arctic environment you've come to love." Anna considered this information carefully. She hadn't known about her father's scientific work, and the connection to Arctic preservation intrigued her. "Your Honor," she said, "may I ask my grandparents a question?" "Certainly." Anna looked directly at the Morrisons. "If I came to live with you, would you let me visit my papa Anyu? Would you let me keep learning about indigenous ways and speaking Inuktitut?" The grandparents exchanged uncertain glances. Helen Morrison spoke first. "Elizabeth, we want you to be happy, but we also want you to have a normal childhood, with friends your own age and proper schooling. I have friends my age, and I have proper schooling for the life I want to live. But sweetheart," Robert Morrison said gently, "there's so much more world to explore. Universities, careers, the chance to continue your father's work in environmental science." Anna felt pulled between different kinds of love and different definitions of opportunity. She looked at Anyu, who nodded encouragingly, reminding her that this choice was hers to make. "Your Honor," Anna said finally, "I think there might be a way to honor both families. But I need time to understand all the possibilities." Judge Armstrong made notes on her legal pad. "This court will recess for 1 week to allow all parties to explore potential compromise solutions. Anna, you'll remain in temporary government custody during this period, but with regular supervised visits from both families." The gavel fell with finality, but Anna knew this was just the beginning of a more complex negotiation about identity, belonging, and the meaning of family across cultural boundaries. The government facility felt like a cage made of kindness. Anna sat at a small desk in her temporary room, surrounded by colorful textbooks that social worker Carol Jenkins had provided as part of her educational assessment. The books contained information about mathematics, science, and literature that children her age were expected to know in mainstream society. Anna opened a geography textbook and stared at maps of the world that reduced her vast Arctic home to a small section of northern Canada. The book described the region as harsh and uninhabitable, and with indigenous populations that were struggling to adapt to modern life. She closed the book with disgust, understanding how outsiders saw her chosen world. A soft knock interrupted her frustration. Carol Jenkins entered, carrying a tray of hot chocolate and cookies, her expression carefully neutral as she observed Anna's reaction to the educational materials. "How are you finding the schoolwork, Anna?" Carol asked, settling into a chair beside the desk. "These books are wrong about many things," Anna replied honestly. "They make my home sound like a place where people only suffer. Well, these are just introductory materials. In a proper school, You'd have teachers who could provide more nuanced perspectives. Anna studied Carol's face, reading the woman's genuine desire to help alongside her complete lack of understanding about Anna's actual educational needs. Carol, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you think a child who can navigate by stars, predict weather changes, and find food in a blizzard is educated or uneducated? Carol paused, clearly struggling with the question. Those are valuable survival skills, but Anna, you also need knowledge that will help you function in the broader world. Reading, writing, mathematics, science. I can read and write in 2 languages. I understand mathematical concepts through practical applications. And I know more about Arctic science than most researchers. To prove her point, Anna pulled out a piece of paper and began sketching diagrams she had learned from Anyu. She drew ice formation patterns, wind direction indicators, and animal migration routes with scientific precision. This is how ice forms under different temperature conditions, she explained. And this shows how caribou navigate using magnetic fields and landmark recognition. I learned this through observation and practice, not from books. Carol examined the drawings with growing amazement. The diagrams were sophisticated and accurate, demonstrating knowledge that most adults would struggle to acquire. Anna, this is impressive work. But there are other subjects you'd need to master for university preparation, career planning. What if I don't want the same career path as other children? What do you mean? Anna set down her pencil and looked directly at Carol. What if I want to become a cultural bridge between traditional knowledge and outside science? What if I want to use my education to help protect the Arctic while honoring indigenous wisdom? The question caught Carol off guard. She had been prepared to discuss basic educational deficits, not complex career aspirations that integrated multiple knowledge systems. That's a very mature goal, Anna, but it would require extensive formal education, I agree. But formal education could supplement my traditional knowledge, not replace it. A second knock interrupted their conversation. Through the facility's reinforced glass window, Anna could see Agent Harrison approaching with her biological grandparents. Robert Morrison carried a briefcase, while Helen Morrison held a wrapped package that suggested a gift. Anna, your grandparents have requested another visit. They want to share some things about your father's work that they think might interest you. Anna nodded, though she felt nervous about these encounters. The Morrisons' love was real but overwhelming, weighted with expectations and grief that she didn't know how to address. The grandparents entered with careful smiles, clearly trying to respect Anna's boundaries while expressing their deep longing for connection. Hello. Elizabeth, Helen Morrison said softly, we brought you something that belonged to your father. She unwrapped the package to reveal a leather journal filled with handwritten notes and sketches. The pages contained detailed observations about Arctic wildlife, climate patterns, and the intersection between indigenous knowledge and scientific research. Anna opened the journal with reverent hands, recognizing her father's careful handwriting. His notes revealed someone who deeply respected traditional knowledge and sought to learn from indigenous communities rather than simply studying them. Your father spent years working with Inuit elders, Robert Morrison explained. He believed that traditional ecological knowledge was essential for understanding climate change. He was trying to build bridges between different ways of knowing. Anna traced her finger over a sketch of caribou migration patterns that closely resembled diagrams Anyu had taught her. Her father had been trying to learn what she already knew. He would have been so proud of what you've learned, Helen Morrison added. And he would have wanted you to have every opportunity to continue his work. For the first time, Anna felt a genuine connection to her biological heritage that didn't require abandoning her chosen family. Her father's scientific goals aligned with her own emerging vision of bridging traditional and modern knowledge. Could I continue his research while also honoring what Anyu taught me? She asked. That's exactly what we're hoping, Robert Morrison replied. We want to support your education in whatever form helps you fulfill your potential. I want to prove something. Anna announced to Judge Armstrong when court reconvened. "I want to show everyone that my education is real, not just different." The courtroom buzzed with curiosity as Anna stood beside a table where she had arranged her father's research journal, traditional tools Anyu had brought from their camp, and a modern emergency survival kit that Agent Harrison had provided for demonstration purposes. "Your Honor," Margaret Clearwater explained, "Anna has requested permission to conduct a practical demonstration of her knowledge and abilities. She believes this will help the court understand the nature and value of her education." Judge Armstrong looked intrigued despite herself. "What kind of demonstration?" "A survival skills comparison," Anna said confidently. "I want to show how traditional knowledge works better than modern equipment in real Arctic conditions." Agent Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, this seems like a publicity stunt rather than legitimate evidence." "No," Anna replied firmly. "This is science. My papa taught me that real knowledge must be tested through experience, not just discussed in theory." Robert Morrison leaned forward from the gallery. "Your Honor, if I may, my son would have appreciated this approach. His research emphasized practical testing of theoretical knowledge." Judge Armstrong considered the unusual request. "Anna, what exactly are you proposing?" "I want to take everyone outside for 1 hour. I will demonstrate how to find water, identify edible plants, predict weather changes, and create emergency shelter using only traditional methods. Then we compare that to what modern survival equipment can accomplish in the same time." "Your Honor," the government attorney objected, "this is highly irregular. We're here to determine legal custody, not to evaluate wilderness skills. But wilderness skills are part of my education," Anna insisted. "If you want to judge whether I've been properly taught, then you need to see what I actually know," Margaret Clearwater added. "Your Honor, the question before this court is whether Anna has received adequate education and care. Her proposal directly addresses that question through practical demonstration." Judge Armstrong made her decision. "We'll adjourn to the courthouse grounds for 1 hour. Anna, you may proceed with your demonstration, but I want expert observers to verify your claims." 30 minutes later, the unlikely group assembled in a small wooded area behind the courthouse building. Anna had changed into her traditional Arctic clothing, while observers wrapped themselves in modern winter coats. The temperature was only slightly below freezing, but the wind made it feel much colder. "First finding water," Anna announced, pulling traditional tools from her pack. She produced a carved bone implement that looked like a simple stick to untrained eyes. "In winter, people think water is everywhere because of snow and ice," she explained while walking among the trees. "But not all water sources are safe, and melting snow wastes precious fuel." She used her bone tool to probe beneath fallen logs and around rock formations, explaining what she was feeling for. Within minutes, she had located a small spring that was still flowing despite the cold. Natural spring water stays liquid longer and contains minerals that help prevent sickness, she said, offering a cupped handful to Judge Armstrong, who accepted it with surprise at its clean taste. Agent Harrison consulted his modern survival kit and withdrew a water purification system that required batteries, filter cartridges, and complex assembly procedures. "The modern equipment is sophisticated," Anna acknowledged respectfully, "but it depends on supplies that can run out or break. Traditional methods use knowledge that works anywhere." Next, she demonstrated plant identification, showing which winter plants provided nutrition, which could treat common ailments, and which were dangerous to consume. Her explanations were precise and scientific, revealing deep understanding of botanical principles. "Your father's journal mentions these same plants," Helen Morrison observed with wonder. "He was trying to learn what you already know." For weather prediction, Anna pointed out cloud formations, wind patterns, and animal behavior that indicated approaching changes in atmospheric conditions. As if summoned by her predictions, snow began falling within minutes of her forecast. Traditional knowledge recognizes patterns that modern meteorology often misses, she explained. Animals and plants respond to pressure changes hours before. Instruments detect them, Finally, she demonstrated emergency shelter construction using materials gathered from the immediate environment. Working with swift efficiency, she created a lean-to that provided genuine protection from the increasing snowfall. Agent Harrison's survival kit included a modern emergency tent, but the complicated instructions and small parts proved challenging to manage in cold conditions with numb fingers. "I'm not saying modern equipment is bad," Anna concluded as they returned to the courthouse. "I'm saying traditional knowledge provides the foundation that makes everything else possible. You cannot truly understand Arctic science without understanding how indigenous people have survived here for thousands of years." Judge Armstrong was quiet for several minutes after they returned to the courtroom, clearly processing what she had witnessed. "Anna," she finally said, "you've demonstrated remarkable knowledge and maturity. But I still must consider your long-term welfare and educational opportunities." "Your Honor," Anna replied, "I think there's a way to honor both kinds of education. My father's journal shows that the best scientists learn from traditional knowledge. Maybe I can do the same thing, but in reverse." The village celebration began at sunset, with the entire community gathering around a great fire that cast dancing shadows across the snow. Anna sat beside Anyu, wearing a beautiful new parka that Tapisa had sewn specifically for this homecoming ceremony. The traditional feast bowl carved from walrus ivory passed from hand to hand, filled with the best foods the community could provide. Judge Armstrong had ruled in favor of what she called innovative family arrangements, allowing Anna to remain with Anyu while establishing formal connections with her biological grandparents. The decision created a new legal precedent that recognized indigenous family structures while protecting children's rights to maintain cultural identity. "Tell us about the outside world," called Nuka, the elder hunter who had initially doubted whether Anna belonged among them. "Did the government people understand what they learned here?" Anna accepted the ceremonial bowl and stood to address the gathering. Following traditional protocols, Anyu had taught her for formal community occasions. They learned that there are many ways to educate a child, she said in fluent Inuktitut, then repeated her words in English for the few outsiders who had been invited to witness this celebration. They learned that family can be built through choice and love, not just blood. The crowd murmured approval. But Anna wasn't finished with her report. "But I also learned important things from them," she continued. "My birth father was a scientist who studied climate change. He wanted to protect the Arctic by combining traditional knowledge with modern research. I think I can continue his work while staying true to everything Papa Anyu taught me." Robert and Helen Morrison sat awkwardly on borrowed caribou hides, clearly moved by the ceremony, but uncertain about their role in this cultural context. They had flown north immediately after the court decision, wanting to understand the world their granddaughter had chosen. "Helen and Robert Morrison," Anna said formally, addressing her grandparents by name, "I invite you to share this feast as members of my extended family." The gesture was significant in ways the Morrisons didn't fully comprehend, but the warmth in Anna's voice conveyed its importance. Helen Morrison wiped away tears as she accepted a portion of traditionally prepared caribou from the ceremonial bowl. "Anna," Robert Morrison said when the formal sharing concluded, "we want you to know that we've established an education fund that will support whatever learning path you choose. Traditional knowledge, formal schooling, university preparation, whatever helps you become the person you want to be." And, Helen Morrison added, "We've made arrangements to visit several times each year. We want to learn about this world that shaped you, so we can understand the remarkable young woman you've become." Anyu had remained quiet during most of the celebration, but now he stood and addressed the gathering with the authority of someone who had proven his judgment through successful results. "This child came to us as a stranger in need," he said, his voice carrying across the firelit circle. "She became my daughter through mutual choice and daily commitment. Now she has shown that love can expand to include more people without becoming smaller What will happen when she grows older? Asked Tuk-Tu, the skeptical hunter who had become one of Anna's strongest supporters after witnessing her practical demonstrations. She will become a bridge between worlds, Anyu replied confidently. She will teach traditional knowledge to outsiders who want to learn, and she will use outside education to help protect our way of life. Anna nodded agreement. I want to study climate science like my birth father, but I want to base that study on indigenous knowledge that has been tested for thousands of years. I want to help outsiders understand that traditional ways aren't primitive. They're sophisticated systems that work. Agent Harrison, who had also been invited to witness the celebration, shifted uncomfortably on his seating hide. Anna, that's an admirable goal, but it will require extensive formal education. University degrees, research credentials, the kind of academic background that commands respect in scientific communities. I understand, Anna replied. That's why my grandparents and I have developed a plan. I'll spend summers here with Papa Anyu, learning traditional knowledge and helping younger children understand their heritage. During the school year, I'll study with tutors and attend classes that prepare me for university. And when she's ready, Robert Morrison added, we'll help her apply to programs that value both traditional and academic knowledge. There are universities now that recognize indigenous wisdom as legitimate science. Tapisa raised the talking stick, signaling that she wanted to address the assembly with formal authority. This child has taught us something important, the elder woman declared. She has shown that we don't have to choose between honoring the old ways and embracing new possibilities. We can do both if we're brave enough to build bridges instead of walls. As the celebration continued late into the night, Anna sat between Anyu and her grandparents, feeling complete for the first time since her mother's death. She belonged to multiple worlds now, and each one made the others stronger rather than competing for her loyalty. The aurora borealis painted the sky in sheets of green and gold, as if the spirits themselves were celebrating this unlikely family's victory over the narrow definitions of love and belonging. 2 years had passed since the court decision, and Anna had grown into her role as cultural ambassador with remarkable grace. Now 8 years old, she moved confidently between the traditional summer camp and the modern classroom, carrying lessons from each world to the other. Today, she stood before a group of visiting environmental science students from the University of British Columbia, demonstrating traditional ice fishing techniques while explaining their scientific principles. The placement of fishing holes follows mathematical patterns that maximize catch efficiency while maintaining sustainable population levels. Anna explained in fluent English, her vocabulary enriched by formal tutoring but grounded in practical experience. Indigenous people developed these methods through thousands of years of trial and error, which is basically the same process scientists call research. The university students scribbled notes frantically, struggling to keep up with Anna's rapid explanations of complex ecological relationships. Dr. Sarah Chen, the professor leading this field research expedition, watched Anna with amazement. The young girl had become exactly what her late father had envisioned, a bridge between traditional and academic knowledge. Anna, Dr. Chen asked, how do you decide when traditional methods are better than modern techniques? Anna considered the question with the seriousness she brought to all academic discussions. Traditional methods work better when you need to understand long-term patterns or when you're working with limited resources. Modern methods work better when you need precise measurements or when you're studying things that happen too slowly for one person to observe completely. She demonstrated by showing both traditional and modern approaches to measuring ice thickness. Her carved bone tool provided immediate feedback about ice safety, while Dr. Chen's electronic instruments gave precise numerical data that could be recorded and compared across different locations. The best approach uses both, Anna concluded. Traditional knowledge tells you what to measure and why it matters. Modern tools help you measure it accurately and share that information with other researchers. Among the students, James Morrison, Anna's teenage cousin who had insisted on joining this expedition, listened with obvious pride. James had become fascinated with his unusual family connection and was considering a career in environmental science, inspired by Anna's unique perspective. "Cousin Anna," James called out, using the informal address that had become natural between them. "Show them the weather prediction techniques." Anna smiled at her cousin's enthusiasm. The relationship with her extended biological family had grown stronger each year. Built on mutual respect rather than obligation, weather prediction combines observation, memory and pattern recognition, Anna explained, scanning the sky with practiced eyes. Traditional knowledge teaches you to read multiple indicators simultaneously. Cloud formations, wind patterns, animal behavior, pressure changes that you feel in your body. She pointed to barely visible atmospheric changes that the students hadn't noticed. "See how the clouds are forming layers? And notice how the ravens are flying closer to the ground. These signs together suggest weather changes within the next 6 hours. Dr. Chen checked her meteorological instruments and confirmed that satellite data predicted a storm system moving into the region that evening. How did indigenous people develop such accurate forecasting without modern technology? One student asked. They had something better than technology, Anna replied. They had centuries of careful observation by people whose lives depended on being right. When mistakes mean death, you learn to pay very close attention to details. As the afternoon progressed, Anna guided the group through traditional teaching methods that engaged multiple senses simultaneously. Students didn't just hear explanations. They felt ice thickness with their hands, tasted different types of snow, listened to wind patterns that indicated approaching weather changes. Modern education often separates learning into different subjects, Anna observed. But traditional education teaches everything together: science, survival, culture, spirituality, because that's how life actually works. The teaching tools Anna used reflected this integrated approach. Traditional carved implements sat alongside modern measuring devices, each serving specific purposes in the comprehensive education she was developing. Her notebooks contained detailed sketches of animal tracks alongside chemical formulas for water purification, cultural stories that preserved ecological knowledge alongside scientific theories about climate change. "Anna," Dr. Chen said as the lesson concluded, "you're developing something completely new, a teaching methodology that honors traditional knowledge while meeting academic standards. Have you considered writing about these techniques?" "My grandparents are helping me document everything," Anna replied. "We want to create educational materials that other indigenous communities can use to teach their children about bridging traditional and modern knowledge." "And," James added with obvious admiration, "Anna's been invited to speak at next year's International Climate Science Conference. She'll be the youngest presenter they've ever had." Anna nodded seriously. "I want to show climate scientists that traditional ecological knowledge isn't just folklore. It's sophisticated science that has been tested for thousands of years. Indigenous communities have data about long-term environmental changes that no modern institution possesses." As the university group prepared to leave, several students requested contact information. Hoping to continue learning from Anna's unique perspective, Dr. Chen lingered to speak privately with Anna about future educational opportunities. "Anna, you're already functioning at a graduate student level in many areas. When you're ready for formal university study, you'll have your choice of programs." Anna looked across the traditional summer camp, where Anyu was teaching younger children about traditional hunting techniques, then toward the departing university group that represented formal academic opportunities. "I think the university will have to adjust to my approach rather than the other way around," she said confidently. "Real education happens when different knowledge systems strengthen each other. The Wind carried the scent of early spring across the tundra as Anna knelt beside the memorial stone she had helped Anyu place 3 years ago. The granite marker stood where her birth mother had died, inscribed with words in both English and Inuktitut that honored the sacrifice that brought two families together. Fresh Arctic flowers surrounded the stone, the same species her mother had pressed into Anna's hands during those final moments. "Tell me about her again," Anna requested softly, settling beside Anyu on the caribou hide they had brought for this annual ceremony. Anyu's weathered hands traced the carved letters of the memorial inscription as he recalled that desperate night. "Your mother was very brave. Even dying, even in terrible pain, she thought only about your safety. She gave you to me not because she didn't love you, but because she loved you more than her own fear." Anna opened her silver locket, now worn smooth by years of handling. The photograph inside had faded slightly, but her father's gentle eyes still watched over her from within the precious metal case. "I understand now why she made that choice," Anna said. "She could see that I needed something she couldn't give me, a chance to become strong in ways that fit who I really am." The memorial ceremony had become a cornerstone of Anna's identity, a moment each year when she honored the courage that created her unusual family structure. Community members gathered annually to witness this remembrance. Understanding its importance for both Anna and Anyu, Elder Saumik approached, carrying a bundle of traditional sage, prepared to conduct the formal blessing that would complete this year's memorial service. Behind him walked Anna's grandparents, who had made this journey north every spring since the court decision. Growing more comfortable each year with indigenous traditions they initially found foreign. "Anna," Helen Morrison said gently, "we brought something we thought you might want to include in today's ceremony." She unwrapped a small package to reveal a laboratory notebook that had belonged to Anna's birth father. The pages contained detailed observations about Arctic ecosystem changes, but also personal reflections about the importance of preserving traditional knowledge alongside scientific research. "Your father wrote about indigenous wisdom with great respect," Robert Morrison explained. "He believed that traditional ecological knowledge represented the longest-running scientific study in human history." Anna accepted the notebook with reverence, understanding that her grandparents were offering another piece of her heritage to incorporate into the memorial tradition. She opened to a page where her father had written about the relationship between cultural preservation and environmental protection. "Scientific research without cultural context is like studying a single thread while ignoring the entire tapestry," Anna read aloud. "Indigenous communities don't just live in these environments. They are part of these environments in ways that academic training rarely teaches researchers to understand." Anyu nodded approvingly. "Your birth father was wise. He understood that knowledge belongs to communities, not just to individuals." The memorial service proceeded with traditional elements that Anna had helped design to honor both sides of her heritage. Saumik conducted indigenous blessings, while Robert Morrison read passages from his son's research that demonstrated respect for traditional ways. Helen Morrison contributed flowers that connected this Arctic memorial to gardens her son had loved in his southern childhood. "This ceremony represents something new," Anna observed as the formal elements concluded. "It shows how different traditions can honor the same values without losing their distinct identities." Young children from the village watched the proceedings with serious attention, learning from Anna's example how to maintain connections across cultural boundaries. Several families had requested Anna's help in developing similar ceremonies for their own complex family situations. "Anna," asked 10-year-old Tunu, one of Anna's regular students, "will you teach us how to create memorial traditions that honor multiple heritages?" "Memorial traditions should reflect the specific people and circumstances they honor," Anna replied thoughtfully. But the basic principle is always the same. You find ways to celebrate all the love that contributed to who you are today. As the ceremony concluded, Anna stood and addressed the gathering with the confidence of someone who had found peace with her complex identity. "My birth mother gave me life twice," she announced. "First when she carried me in her body, and second when she placed me in Papa Anyu's hands. Today, we honor both gifts." She placed her father's notebook beside the memorial stone, adding it to the collection of meaningful objects that marked this sacred spot. The gesture symbolized the integration of scientific and traditional knowledge that had become Anna's life mission. "Some people think you have to choose between honoring the past and building the future," Anna continued. "But this place teaches us that the strongest foundations are built from multiple traditions working together." As the sun set across the endless Arctic landscape, the gathered families reflected on how love transcends the boundaries that separate cultures, creating new forms of belonging that strengthen rather than diminish traditional ways. The memorial stone stood as permanent witness to the truth that families are built through courage, choice, and the willingness to see beyond conventional definitions of kinship. At 12 years old, Anna wore the traditional leader's medallion with quiet dignity as she addressed the village council meeting. The carved ivory pendant, passed down through generations of community leaders, rested against her throat just above the silver locket that remained her constant companion. The contrast between the two pieces of jewelry perfectly symbolized her unique position bridging traditional authority and personal heritage. "The proposal from the mining company requires careful consideration," Anna said, consulting notes written in both English and Inuktitut. "Their environmental impact study shows they don't understand how their activities would affect traditional hunting and fishing areas." The mining representatives sat uncomfortably at the edge of the council circle, clearly unprepared to negotiate with someone so young, yet obviously knowledgeable about both environmental science and indigenous rights law. Anna had been studying such issues for 3 years now, combining traditional ecological knowledge with formal legal education provided by tutors her grandparents had arranged. "Miss Morrison," said Richard Palmer, the mining company's lead negotiator, "we've conducted extensive environmental surveys according to all federal requirements. Our operations would provide significant economic benefits to this community." "Mr. Palmer," Anna replied calmly, "your surveys measured soil chemistry and water quality, but they didn't assess impacts on caribou migration patterns, traditional fishing grounds, or sacred sites that have cultural significance. Complete environmental assessment requires understanding all the ways land is used, not just the ways that show up in government databases." Elder Nuka nodded approvingly from his position in the council circle. Anna had learned to present complex arguments with the measured authority expected of the traditional leaders, while incorporating scientific precision that commanded respect from outside negotiators. Furthermore, Anna continued, economic benefits must be evaluated against long-term sustainability. Short-term mining profits mean nothing if they destroy resources that have supported this community for thousands of years. She gestured toward a detailed map she had prepared, showing both geological survey data and traditional land use patterns that the mining company's researchers had failed to identify. "This map integrates your scientific data with traditional knowledge about seasonal hunting areas, water sources, and ecological relationships that aren't visible to outside observers. As you can see, your proposed mining sites overlap with critical traditional use areas." Palmer studied the map with growing concern. Anna's integration of technical and traditional information revealed environmental conflicts that his company's standard assessment procedures had completely missed. "What would you recommend as an alternative approach?" Palmer asked, his tone shifting from dismissive to genuinely curious. Collaborative assessment that includes traditional knowledge holders as equal partners in environmental evaluation. Anna replied immediately. Indigenous communities have detailed observations about ecosystem changes spanning multiple generations. That's data your company cannot obtain any other way. Anyu watched from his position in the council circle, his weathered face reflecting pride in Anna's diplomatic skills. At 12, she was already functioning as an effective advocate for her community while maintaining respect for outside perspectives that offered genuine value. Anna, said Council Member Tapisa, explain to our visitors how traditional consultation processes work. Anna stood and moved to the center of the circle. Following protocols she had learned through years of observing elder decision-making processes. Traditional consultation means that community members with specific knowledge about affected areas participate directly in assessment design and implementation, when she explained. Elders who have hunted these lands for decades, women who gather traditional plants, children who will inherit the consequences of today's decisions. All of these perspectives contribute essential information. She looked directly at Palmer as she continued. Your company's current approach treats indigenous knowledge as supplementary information to be collected after technical decisions have been made. Effective consultation makes indigenous knowledge central to the entire process. That would significantly change our project timeline and methodology, Palmer observed. Yes, Anna agreed, but it would also significantly improve your chances of developing economically viable projects that don't trigger years of legal challenges from communities who were excluded from meaningful participation. Palmer exchanged glances with his colleagues, recognizing the practical wisdom in Anna's proposal, despite her young age. Miss Morrison, would you be willing to serve as a consultant to help us redesign our assessment process? Anna considered the request carefully, understanding its implications for her community and her own developing expertise. I would consider such a role if it included formal recognition of traditional knowledge holders as equal partners, not just information sources, she replied. And if it included binding commitments to halt development if assessment reveals unacceptable environmental or cultural impacts. Those are significant requirements, Palmer said. They're necessary requirements, Anna responded firmly. My community won't participate in consultation. Processes designed to legitimize predetermined decisions. The meeting concluded with agreements to reconvene after the mining company revised their proposal according to Anna's recommendations. As the outside negotiators packed their materials, Palmer approached Anna privately. Miss Morrison, your understanding of both environmental science and negotiation strategy is remarkably sophisticated. Have you considered a career in environmental law or policy development? Anna smiled, fingering the leader's medallion that represented her growing responsibilities to her community. Mr. Palmer, I'm already pursuing that career, but I'm building it from the foundation of traditional knowledge upward, rather than trying to add indigenous perspectives to outside frameworks that don't really understand our values. The tiny bundle in Anna's arms stirred restlessly, seeking warmth that only human contact could provide. Lucy, barely 6 months old, had arrived at their community 3 weeks ago under circumstances that echoed Anna's own desperate beginning. Her teenage mother had died in a vehicle accident during a blizzard, leaving behind a child with no known relatives and no clear path toward safety. Anna adjusted the soft sealskin blanket she had sewn specifically for this newest addition to their extended family. The fabric was lined with the finest Arctic fox fur, every stitch placed with the precision Anyu had taught her years ago when she was learning to value both beauty and function in traditional crafts. She's stopped crying, Anyu observed from his position beside the fire, where he was carving a new set of bone needles for Anna's sewing projects. At 65, his hands moved with the same steady skill Anna remembered from childhood. Though silver now dominated his dark hair, she feels safe now, Anna replied. recognizing the signs of a child beginning to trust after trauma. Babies know when they're truly wanted. The adoption process had been surprisingly straightforward this time. Anna's reputation as a successful bridge between traditional and outside systems had influenced government officials to respect her community's ability to provide appropriate care for vulnerable children. Her documented success in maintaining cultural identity while accessing formal education created precedents that protected indigenous adoption practices. "Are you certain about taking on this responsibility?" Anyu asked gently. "You're only 14, Anna. You have university preparations, community leadership duties, speaking engagements with international organizations." Anna looked down at Lucy's peaceful face, seeing echoes of her own journey from terror to belonging reflected in the infant's gradual relaxation. "Papa, do you remember what you told me about love not being a limited resource? About how the heart can hold many truths at once?" Anyu smiled, recognizing his own wisdom reflected back to him through years of patient teaching. "I remember. But I also remember how much work it takes to raise a child properly, especially a child who needs healing from early trauma. Then it's good that I learned from the best teacher available," Anna replied, settling Lucy into a traditional cradleboard that positioned the baby securely while allowing Anna to continue her daily activities. The decision to adopt Lucy represented more than personal choice. It demonstrated the continuation of traditional values in contemporary circumstances. Anna was showing her community that ancient patterns of kinship and protection could adapt to modern challenges without losing their essential meaning. "What will you tell her about her origins?" Anyu asked. "The truth, when she's old enough to understand it. That her birth mother loved her enough to ensure she was found by people who could care for her properly. That family is built through daily choice and commitment, not just through biological connection." Anna had spent considerable time preparing for this adoption, consulting with elders about traditional child-rearing practices, while researching contemporary understanding of infant development and trauma recovery. Her approach integrated indigenous wisdom about communal child-raising with modern knowledge about attachment and emotional security. The university will allow you to defer enrollment for a year while you adjust to motherhood, Anyu mentioned, referring to the prestigious environmental science program that had been courting Anna since her presentation at the International Climate Conference. "Actually, I've decided to propose a different arrangement," Anna said, shifting Lucy to a more comfortable position. "I want to design an independent study program that documents traditional child-rearing practices while I'm learning them myself. My research could contribute to academic understanding of indigenous family systems." The proposal was typically innovative. For Anna, turning personal experience into scholarly contribution while maintaining her commitment to community values. "Dr. Chen thinks the university will approve the proposal," Anna continued, referring to her longtime mentor who had become a powerful advocate for Anna's unconventional educational path. Indigenous knowledge about child development could inform contemporary approaches to early childhood education. As if sensing the conversation about her future, Lucy opened her eyes and gazed directly at Anna with the focused attention that infants reserve for their primary caregivers. The connection was immediate and profound, creating the kind of bond that transcends biological relationship. "She already knows you're her mama," Anyu observed with satisfaction. "And I already know she's my daughter," Anna replied, understanding that this moment completed a cycle begun years ago when her own dying mother placed her in Anyu's protective hands. "What will you name her?" Anna had been considering this question since the day Lucy arrived. Traditional naming practices required careful consideration of the child's circumstances, character, and the qualities her family hoped she would develop. "Lucy Siku Morrison Watson," Anna announced. "Lucy," for the name her birth mother gave her, "Siku for the strength she'll need in this climate, Morrison for my birth heritage, and Watson for the family that chose us both." Anyu nodded approvingly. The name honored all relevant traditions while creating something new that reflected their unique family structure. She will grow up knowing that love creates family, he said, just as you learned, and she'll learn that being chosen is just as powerful as being born into belonging, Anna added, gently rocking the cradle board as Lucy drifted toward sleep. Outside their warm shelter, the aurora borealis painted the sky in familiar patterns of green and gold, as if the spirits themselves were welcoming this newest member of their unconventional but deeply rooted family. 10 years had passed since Lucy's arrival, and the village had grown into something unprecedented, a thriving community that balanced traditional ways with carefully chosen modern innovations. Anna, now 24, stood beside the community center she had helped design, watching 3-year-old Tommy play with children whose families represented the same complex heritage patterns that had defined her own upbringing. The family history scroll that Anna had been writing for the past 5 years lay open on the table beside her, its pages documenting the remarkable journey that had brought so many unlikely families together. Written in both English and Inuktitut, the scroll served as both historical record and instruction manual for future generations who might face similar choices about identity and belonging. "Mama Anna," called 10-year-old Lucy, running across the playground with her arms full of traditional crafts she had been learning to create. "Look what Elder Tapisa taught me to weave today." Anna examined the small basket Lucy had woven from traditional materials, noting the tight, even stitches that demonstrated genuine skill rather than mere childhood approximation. "Beautiful work, Lucy. The pattern shows you understand how form follows function in traditional design." Lucy beamed with pride, her confidence reflecting the secure attachment that Anna had worked carefully to nurture despite the challenges of young parenthood combined with academic and community responsibilities. "And Tommy helped me gather the materials," Lucy added, gesturing toward her younger brother who was now chasing other children in a game that taught tracking skills through play. Anna smiled, watching Tommy's natural ease with traditional games that connected learning to joy. At 3, he already showed the keen observational skills that would serve him well in whatever educational path he eventually chose. Anyu approached from the direction of the fishing area, moving more slowly than in previous years, but still carrying himself with the quiet dignity that had first impressed Anna during her desperate childhood arrival. At 75, he had become a living repository of traditional knowledge that visitors from around the world sought to understand and document. "The university delegation will arrive tomorrow," he informed Anna, settling into a chair positioned to overlook both the traditional activities and the modern educational facility that served their expanding community. "Are you ready for their questions about non-conventional family structures and educational methodologies?" Anna asked, knowing that academic visitors sometimes struggled to understand how their community had achieved such remarkable success in preserving traditional culture while embracing beneficial innovations. "I am ready to tell them what we have always known," Anyu replied with characteristic wisdom, that children flourish when they are loved unconditionally and taught practical skills for thriving in their chosen world. The approaching university delegation represented Anna's latest project, a formal research partnership that would document their community's child-rearing practices while providing resources for other indigenous communities facing similar challenges of cultural preservation and adaptation. Anna called Dr. James Morrison, her cousin, who had become a respected environmental scientist in his own right. "The documentary crew wants to interview you about the longitudinal study results." Anna had agreed to participate in a 10-year follow-up study tracking outcomes for children raised in non-traditional family structures. The results had exceeded even optimistic projections, showing higher levels of cultural identity, academic achievement, and emotional stability compared to children in conventional arrangements. Tell them I'll be available after the children's evening activities conclude, Anna replied. Her priorities clearly established around family responsibilities rather than external obligations. As sunset approached, Anna gathered her extended family for their daily tradition of shared storytelling. Lucy and Tommy settled beside her, while Anyu positioned himself in the honored elder's spot. Other families joined the circle, creating the kind of intergenerational learning environment that had sustained indigenous communities for countless generations. Tonight, I want to read from our family history scroll, Anna announced, opening the carefully preserved document to its opening pages. In the endless white of the Arctic tundra, she began, a dying mother made one final desperate plea, placing her daughter into the hands of a man who had nothing but skill and heart. The children listened with rapt attention to the familiar story, understanding that it explained not just Anna's beginning, but the principles that guided their entire community. The story teaches us that family is built through daily choice and commitment, Anna continued, reaching the scroll's concluding passages. Love creates belonging more powerfully than blood, and courage creates opportunity more effectively than circumstance. As the evening's storytelling concluded, Anna looked around the circle at faces representing multiple generations of chosen families, traditional families, and innovative combinations that defied easy categorization. What will you add to our family story? She asked Lucy and Tommy, as she did every evening. That love keeps growing, Lucy replied immediately. That families help each other, Tommy added, with 3-year-old earnestness. Anna carefully rolled the family history scroll and placed it in its protective case, knowing that tomorrow would bring new chapters to their continuing story of belonging, choice, and the endless capacity of the human heart to create home in the most unlikely circumstances. The aurora borealis painted the sky in its eternal dance, blessing another generation of children who would grow up knowing that love transcends every boundary except the ones we choose to honor.